You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
This is Ken Vellante with the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast, and I'm very excited to have Nataša Babič on the program all the way at this moment from Slovenia, which is kind of exciting. So Nataša, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, listeners, we were chatting because sometimes you figure out how we connected, and so listeners, I've had Matthew Kyle Levine, director, on a couple times, and I first saw Nataša in a very incredible feature called Daddy's Wallet, and became acquainted through your work with IMDb, and so you're in a Hallmark movie, which I'm a sucker. I'm kind of a sucker for. I admitted it at different times, admitted it in the sense because sometimes the things I'm interested, people oh, there's that too. But yes,
Yeah.
Excited to see that. But so tell us about acting and reaching us here from Slovenia, and your work in New York.
Sure. I love that we have this connection through Daddy's Wallet with Matthew Kyle Levine, because I really enjoyed working with him. That was, I think the little short that we did was the first thing after COVID. I mean, it was still kind of, people were just started working on things,
Yeah.
And we were all so happy to be doing something, and I think that just proved on screen as well that everybody was just so ready to be creative and do something together with other people in the same space. So I love that connection. Yes, I lived in New York for many years, 15 years, just kind of crazy number when you say it out loud. And now I'm back in Slovenia. Question. I came to New York. I was supposed to stay there for 3 months and do a workshop in Lee Strasberg Theater and Institute.
Yeah.
And I was, I'm just going for 3 months. I just finished. I studied musical theater in Vienna. I actually lived in Vienna. And then I was I'll just go for 3 months. I was auditioning, and I was if I get this job, then I'm going to go to Germany to do this production. But if I don't get it, I'm going to go to New York for 3 months. Because I actually, to be honest, musical wasn't really my thing. I just loved acting, but I felt like I needed something to shift to allow me to do that. I don't know if I was, the circumstances to be right. So that's how I came to New York for 3 months and then stayed 15 years. And went to Strasberg, which was, I think, one of the best 2 years of my life. I mean, of course, we were all super young and green to New York,
Well, what is that? Not to interrupt you in your flow and what you're talking about there, and I'm saying this completely from the outside. That experience, from what I know from the outside, is transformational. I know you can't put it in a nutshell, but what was that experience like for somebody from the outside to understand going through that program?
It was just really inspirational and creative. And it was out of the forms that I was taught before, because I came from dance, kind of stumbled into musical from that. And I felt and also living in New York and living in Vienna before, there's a structure. Everything's kind of was structured also in my education and the way I was, and I felt like New York allowed me to let loose, and also the Strasberg, the approach is very much to allow things to happen to you, and then to create basically this moment, to create the moments where then the story happens, the storytelling, to create, the surroundings for the storytelling to happen. So I felt like I really learned what my craft actually is when I was there. I was like, okay, yes, this is what I know how to do. This is what I'm doing. And feels right, So that I feel like was my validation of something that I was looking for, but didn't know how to yet to express. Yeah.
I had seen your work with Daddy's Wallet, but like I had seen like your clips as well, because I'm fascinated by acting, and part of the reason I asked you on is because you're an excellent actor, and
Thank you.
it's noticeable. And I want to tell you, just it's probably useful for like weird inflections of like how the audience respond, because there's like a kind of like intimacy of like maybe seeing you on Instagram, and then maybe kind of like knowing some of your background, and then seeing you in the scene, which is so different, which is still this kind of like,
yeah, it's a
basic,
person.
yeah, right. And I want to just mention that, because even at my age and stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, that. And but not only that, I just wanted to say that in senior scenes, I was like, it's like, oh, this is around like a scene. And what you said was really interesting about starting, like, say, with Daddy's Wallet, and like how everybody was waiting to have the ability to perform. What was that palpably like after such what was a long layoff for folks? I mean, you mentioned some components of it, but what were people like being like, we're doing a scene?
Yeah, we were just really happy and emotional. And thank God, I don't know if you remember, but my scenes were emotional. So me being emotional already on top of that just helped. I was just happy because, it's acting as an art form. It's playing. So you need other people,
Yeah.
And if you're a musician or a painter, your creativity or your expression, you can be by yourself, Of course you need an audience and everything, and you want people to see your work, but acting just itself, like, you can't do it by yourself. You need other people. So I feel like the COVID was particularly hard on that for the acting community, because we were like, we were, thank God for Zoom, so we could do like some plays over Zoom, but that's just not the same as being in the same room and actually feeding of each other's energies,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Just to wrap it up with that answer, I think everybody was just really happy to be there.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to also chat generally about art, and just from from your being from Slovenia, and also mentioning Vienna as well. I'm thinking like art, and like what might be some of your experience with this. But so I'd ask you, what is art, and invite you as far as any of what you've been in contact with
Yeah.
environmentally in New York, of course, but like how that might inform.
Yeah.
But the question, what is art?
What is art? I believe that art is one of the most basic expressions of humans. Like, babies dance or wiggle to music before they know how to talk.
Yeah.
Or they even draw before they really know how to express themselves yet, or know how to do, I don't know, go to the bathroom or whatever,
Yeah.
Like, so it is really basic. And then, we grow up and we do all sorts of things, but, and then we sometimes wonder, like, as an artist, when things get hard, you wonder, like, why am I doing it, But yet it feels, as something very innate and natural and basic. And I would love if the rest of the society if the whole society would see it like that and give, more support to the artists, because I do feel that is one of the most basic humans expressions.
Yeah. I was wondering about that too. Now, I've had the impression is the shows worldwide, and I talk to artists, and one of the things as far as social policy I really notice is that maybe in some other countries, more of an active talk about art grants and kind of public support for the arts, and it's a very different conversation within the marketplace in the U.S. I'm just saying that one of the things I enjoy sometimes is just hearing like differently how culturally the arts may be supported,
Yeah,
or not.
that's something that you're talking about, and me being back in Slovenia, I'm so amazed that, like, for example, actors, there's all these theaters across the country, and then you have a job for life if you're in a theater, or there's artist support that you apply for and you have insurance. You have to prove, of course, that you're not just anybody can get it. You have to prove that you have a certain body of work, but then you have life insurance and you're supported, and you feel like,
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
can take time to do what you actually know how to do. But also something that I thought about before when you were talking about the importance of art, and we're talking about the pandemic before, and I thought it was so interesting during like the pandemic, like when people had different conversations of like, oh, what is really important and what is not important, and people were like, oh, well, art, we don't really need it, we need healthcare and blah blah blah, and I'm like, what were you doing during the pandemic? I was watching different shows, and I'm like, sorry, you did what? So what is
Reading
that?
books. Yeah.
And I was, oh yeah, but I don't really need to watch TV. I could also just read things. So oh, you were reading. So, that means there's a writer on the other side. And it's interesting how people don't realize that, how much of people's everyday lives is filled with art. Like, you don't need to go to a museum. You can just drive in a car and listen to your radio, or I don't know, there's moments in everyone's daily life that is filled with art without them even maybe realizing,
Yeah. Well, I think, and I think that's a really great discussion. I mean, I felt at the time sometimes it's easier, right, for the physical material needs, of the body, right, like around pandemic or times of scare. But there's this other component that I believe, like in general, we're still like an infancy of understanding of like what it is to need nourishment, and I'm pointing to my head, to need nourishment and to need basic food and water for your brain, for like
Yeah, and for the
the,
soul,
for
and
the
have
soul. Yeah.
exactly for body, mind, and spirit. Totally.
Yeah. So I mean, I thought it just really brought that to the fore. But yeah, I mean, they became more important, and that's the question I had related. We started to get into it here. Is the I ask now is, you know art has a particular role historically. One of the things I wonder is that 2023 here, we're talking late
Hmm.
summer, Oregon
Hmm.
to Slovenia. And is art more important now? Is it always doing what it's supposed to be doing? It's just the times are the times right now.
Um, it's interesting. I think it's always important. I do think it is very important now because I think this is global, not just personal, that we all feel that the times are, there's a electric, there's stuff going on and there's been stuff going on for a while,
Yeah.
around us, and I feel whenever there's those ages where there's a lot going on socially, we have the pandemic, we have war going on. There's tension, you know. I feel that there's always kind of a ground or a space opens up where we need to make sense of what is going on, or at least express ourselves and say, hey, I'm feeling like this. Who else is feeling like this, you know? And I feel this is definitely the time and space that we're in right now. And I do feel or hope as well that it is an invitation for more art and more conversation to happen, you know? And like, as hard as it is, I'm always an optimist. Perhaps it is also a fertile ground for something to grow from.
Yeah. I got a different one. The art of acting, and, you know, being on the moving screen, you can be seen by a lot of different folks. You as an actor, what's one big thing that folks kind of get wrong about or misunderstand about the acting performance from the actor's perspective? I mean,
it's kind of, I'm just going to be really honest, you know, it's kind of interesting because when I'm working on a role, or when or like when I was shooting the Hallmark movie or whatever it was, I never think about this being on the big screen and all these people seeing it. I just have this love for and need to express and tell stories, and so interested in who these people are, and I feel that sometimes people see it from outside, you know, because I feel like a lot of actors are actually shy in a way. Not that I'm particularly shy. I feel like I'm, what is the word? Introverted extrovert or something like that.
Yeah.
And then don't necessarily have this need to be seen by all these people or have that attention, but that there's just the love for the work that is there and that wants to be shown. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I find it. I mean, I watch a lot of film, and, you know, I get to interview some actors and directors, and, you know, it's an area, an industry that's ripe for, you know, the perceptions of what people, you know, perceive it to be.
Sorry to cut you off, but I just
No.
just when you said that you interview a lot of actors, I just had this like light bulb come up of this recent thing that I heard. Just to make more sense of what I was trying to say, I think that there was an interview with, like, Jack Nicholson was doing some movie. I forgot which one. Oh, I forgot. And the director said to him, you know, because when the camera is on you, you're really trying to do your best performance. But when the camera is on the other person and you're just, you know, it's not your take, a lot of actors don't, like, some actors don't do 100%. They just, like, tone it down a little bit, or not really. I always just do everything because I'm always just trying to make it better. But Jack Nicholson just kept doing it full out, you know, and the director, I'm so sorry, I forgot, for the sake of the story, I should have looked it up. I forgot who the director was, but the director said to him, you know, Jack, you don't need to do it full out all the time, you know? And he said, oh, you forget, you know, something you don't know. I just love it so much. That, you know, that, and especially if you're a screen actor, unless you're really lucky and you're in your busy period, you don't get to do it so often, because also then the movie takes a year to be edited and blah, blah, blah. So that short amount of time that you have, you just really want to savor it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, also I think young actors or people that want to be in the industry, they like the, people think, oh, it's about the glitz and the glamour, or, oh, people want to get famous, they want to get recognized. But what is the most important thing is your love for the work, because otherwise you will never continue doing it, because it's just too hard to keep doing it, And I feel like from my own experience, also I've been at it for a while, just hold on to the love.
Yeah, it's a really discreet and important point, because I would even, I would even say, as a creator, I want to say deal with that dynamic all the time, So my day job, I work in the labor movement, and my gosh, perspective is that it has to be results oriented, right? For good reason. And so there's a relationship with the work that way. And then one of the things I find in creating, and I mean, when it comes to creativity, I write and I paint, and largely I do the podcast. But I find when I'm doing the podcast, I have to check my head, because my head has a lot of programming to be like barrel through, and knowing that my art, my space, and the this of creating is just unto itself, like a constant reminder of not necessarily tied to amount of downloads or this or that. And that's a real tough, like maybe not industry, but when there's a way of looking at things that's always like, what is it churning? What is it doing?
It's result orientated. The whole society is result orientated, and you
pointing out like that piece of being like going back to it is something that I regularly do, and you find yourself doing, just be like in the performance, in the doing.
Exactly.
Right?
Because even like I do the same thing. My mind is result orientated. Oh, this scene should be like this, or this should be like this, or this is. And that's usually when the work is not good. But like when you can just, even if it's split seconds or however long it lasts, that you can be like, no, just be in the process, allow yourself to be there in the process, then surprising things happen, and good things happen.
Nataša, because I can't ask anybody else right off the bat, Slovenian film. And now I'm a bit of a film buff, so I just have to ask these type of questions. But like, so I've watched a lot of Czech film, a lot of Japanese film. Like what? You talked about some of the support of the arts that was been nice that you've seen within being back in Slovenia. What about Slovenian film? Tell us about that.
Slovenian film. I'm actually shooting next week a Slovenian film. It's a short
This wasn't
film.
me just to try to sneak in and find out what you're up to. I want to know. I want you to riff on Slovenian film for a bit.
So Slovenian film, it's... So here's the thing about Slovenia. We're very small. There's only 2 million of us. So hence you only have a public of 2 million people that speak this language and watch your movies, TV shows, and so forth. So there's not a lot of financial support in that spectrum that's needed to do, even though nevertheless, there's very good, great stuff happening. Like, I think let alone this year, there's like so many different projects, especially because a lot of projects have been like, put on hold because of the pandemic. That this year there's just so much coming to fruition, and I feel people are really being creative, and it's growing. I must say, like a couple of years back, there was so many less things happening or shooting in Slovenia, and now it's starting to pick up. And TV is starting to pick up. We would always only have foreign shows that we would watch, and now we have our own shows that are great. But it's slow. It's a slow process.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I haven't lived here in Slovenia for so many years because I'm not going to count now, but it's been a long time. I feel like I'm a little bit of an outsider because the space is so small. Everyone knows each other and works with people that they know.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm slowly trying to, like, you know, get into the scene here. So I'm happy for everything that happens, but it's been fun. And what I'm actually working on, we're starting to shoot this coming week. It's Second World War story, which is particularly interesting in Slovenia because Slovenia was like a little tiny melting pot from all sorts of sides that were, you know, battling on our ground, and let alone Slovenians being confused as to where they belong and how they can form their own independency. So it's an interesting story, and I'm very excited about it. I don't know do you want me to talk about it a little bit, about the story?
I really do. Yeah, that'd be nice.
So the story, it's actually a true story. It's a true story of a mom and a son that they had a shop. This was like a local shop in the outskirts of Ljubljana, where, you know, the people from town and the people from maybe a little bit outside of town would come in. And since this was the beginning of the Italian occupation of Slovenia, the Italians would come in, but then also the partisans, which were like undercover at that point, the people that were fighting for Slovenia to be independent would come in. So it was a melting pot. And I, as much as I can, I'm trying to keep it as a neutral ground, but eventually it's not neutral anymore, and the war does come in. And the true story of this family is that the father, so the husband of my character, was sent, I think, to some northern front, so he was away. And eventually they were told that it would be better if they left because they were accused to collaborate with the Italians or perhaps being too friendly with the Italians. Whereas, you know, just having a store, and what can you say? You're not selling to certain people. It doesn't work that way. But nevertheless, the true story is that they eventually fled Slovenia and migrated to America. Yeah. And lost contact, because of course there was no cell phones or internet back then, lost contact completely with the husband father, was on the Russian front or somewhere far away. And then 10 years later, he went to, or even 15 years later, he found them in the United States.
Oh, wow.
They found each other after 15 years.
Oh, my goodness.
And lived, you know, then all of them moved, and since they were quite successful, you know, they had this successful business back in Ljubljana, they actually had a very good life. They managed to have quite a good life then in US. So it's a true story, which I always love. So yeah, it's a short movie, but I feel there's so much there that I'm hoping that maybe.
Yeah. I love the story. It's one of those things, as the host I mentioned from time to time, like I gotta roll into the story a bit and then wait a second, there's another question, another thing to do on this show.
No,
thanks.
It's fun. I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, talking about cinema in Slovenia, I feel there's a lot of talent, but it's a very small space. So I think, but you know, every space has limitations, and it's hard to put things up on its feet. I think wherever you are, you have different kind of issues that you're you know confronted with to make things work and to create art and to make it happen.
Yeah, there's no exact, like, on the great art. I mean, you know, there's no map from it when you look at it overall. I mean, I think it's one of the wonderful things, but also one of the frustrations is, like, you can easily bump into great art, never expected to find it here, and you're like, look over here, like that type of thing. And films are very much like that. When you see a small film and you're like, oh my gosh, and
Yeah.
get excited about it. But that's part of the promotion and excitement around art. I got a big question. I got to drop on you the something rather than nothing question, right? Because I didn't
Oh,
know if I didn't know if you if you want to have an aggressive go at that one. But the general question is, and it can be related to art, is why is there something rather than nothing at all?
oh, definitely something rather than nothing. I mean, I feel in any aspect, whether if it's art or life, if we're going from a creative way, there's every experience that you're going to go on, there's something going to come out of it. If it's just experience, you learn something. You learn something with every new project that you're on, with conversations that you have, with things that don't work, especially those things, you learn. So there's always something to be had, and so is in life. What are you gonna stay at home? No, if you want to have a full life, if you want to have experiences, go out and live it. So I would very much say something rather than nothing. And also, I feel in like acting, if we're looking from that, I sometimes wish, like, I remember when I was younger and I was starting out as an actor in New York, and you'd have different people telling you, like, I had some teachers like, oh, you can't just do everything. You should be selective. You should do this. You should do that. And, you have some people that say that, oh, you should, not say yes to everything. You're just like, and now looking back, I was like, no. You should, especially if you're new at something, you should go out and just do everything and learn and
Because you
learn
don't
and
know, I
learn.
guess, right? You don't
Because you
know.
never know. And also, you never know what, of course, if you don't feel like, trust your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel right, don't do it. But on the other hand, do it, because you never know where the connection is going to lead you to. You never know what you're going to learn. You never know who the right people will be until you meet them that you want to collaborate later on, or whenever the time is right. And I just generally in life, I feel that, don't shy away from it. Definitely go out and live it.
Yeah. No,
So
I really
definitely something rather than nothing.
I appreciate that. Hey, just another curious arts question is for you, obviously trained in acting and such. Other type of training and you being around the arts. Is there any contact with other training that you've had uh, in acting that that helps you with acting rather than just formal acting training? Whether it's kind of
Yes. I feel that, all kinds. I mean, I used to be a dancer, so it's kind of interesting. I actually still, though I love the camera, I feel much more comfortable and at home on stage because I feel like I can move.
yeah.
Because on camera, I sometimes would look at my takes and be like, why am I moving so much? It's like my dancer side, It's like, stay still, just tell the story,
Yeah.
But I always want to express myself, with the body. So, but which is also a good thing because that means that you're in the body. You're not quite there,
Yeah.
But I'm also a yoga teacher, so meditation and those practices really help just to stay present. If whatever kind of life that you have, it doesn't need to be art, whatever it is, but particularly in art, I think it's because, especially with acting, you're expressing the moments. You're always, it's happening right there. It's not something that is going to happen later. It's happening right there. So having practices that help you stay grounded and stay present and stay here and not be in the 5 minutes after or before, but be here and now. I think any kind of practices like that are really, really helpful for acting and probably other art forms as well.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Pardon me, with the yoga as well. I mean, I had a recent loss of a friend of mine, and the yoga session I had recently was just pivotal in an unexpected way of helping. And I'll just tell you about it because part of this whole show is healing, the arts and healing and such. But I try to get into yoga as much as I can. And one of the biggest things that I know that happens that is so helpful for me is that my body gets contorted into weird different shapes and directions and movement. And within yoga, when I am moving my body in a way that's just repositioning it and also paying attention to my breath, I can feel my body like reconstituting in a different way and some discomfort within that, but it's a real profound thing. And it was particularly helpful for me this week. And another thing I just wanted to mention too, just like on your points as well with mindfulness, I've recently gone really deep into it the last few days with the idea was this, with the loss of my friend and with grief, was that I know and have believed for a long time that there's a path or an answer or a way to deal with suffering or imbalance or pain. And it's right in those two areas that you said. So I wanted to like pause when we're talking about art and then like yoga teach. It's never for me in my head just like an appendage, like it's an embodiment of like how you interact with the world. So thank you for that. And
Yeah,
I've been
absolutely.
using it intensely recently, which is why I kind of wanted to mention those few things.
Yeah, I'm happy you found your way to it. I think it's it's a gift, and yes, to know ourselves, right? To know why we're here, how we are here, so that we can serve others and we can serve the community and be part of it in a greater way.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
movement too. The word movement for me, and when you were talking about
Oh yes,
your
talking about
scenes and such, and I know
yeah.
from
No,
like
movement is
yeah,
just like I feel our body sometimes is um knows better than the mind.
yeah, yeah,
Because it knows what's right for you, how you feel, where you're at, and also like that gut feeling, if something is wrong or right, right or wrong, before you register and think about it. Um, yeah, so that's why I feel sorry to go back to your question before regarding um, the movement practices are very important. I feel especially in acting. So you embody because you have to physically embody other people, and also to embody other people, you have to feel yourself first, your body.
yeah,
Like because
yeah,
I feel like the interesting part of the acting is that you are the instrument. It's not outside of you. It's not this guitar that you can play and then flip the
yeah,
side, but it's
yeah.
like, is this,
You're
So
the vessel.
you are the vessel. So you have to know it well to make it, do and become things that you want it to become. So, which is a great thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the conversations. And one of the things even about movement, whether it's dance and all those other things. I think I've learned more through the show. And there's a piece where I've thought more deeply about it now than in the past. I think of like, I'm 51, male of a generation. It isn't like I grew up at a time where like, move, young man, and feel yourself, like movement,
No,
like,
you were trying to feel less, don't feel that way.
right. So I find those pieces of my learning that involve movement as expression or breathing or like getting beyond or getting through. I'm very fascinated into those because I think there's been at least I feel for myself, a deprivation at times of that type of release. So
Totally.
thank you for the conversation and encouragement.
And
the ability to put on some James Brown music or something to get some of that out,
Yeah.
Nataša, you have to tell the listeners all the different ways in which to find your work, to find you, or just tell
to find me.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I have a website, which is natasababic.com. So my first and my last name. And then you can also find me on Instagram, which is my first and my last name, NatasaBabicNYC.
Yeah.
I was thinking to change that because I'm not in New York at the moment, but I'm just gonna leave it.
But you still kind of
I feel like once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker.
You're still kind of
exactly. I've lived such important years of my life in New York, so it's always there. It'll always be there with me. Yes, and those are, I would say, are the two most important channels. You can also watch The Dancing Detective, A Deadly Tango on Hallmark. You have to look it up when it's streaming next. It was just streaming this week, so I don't know when it's coming up next.
I think I just missed it. I was plunking around.
It's on a regular. It's around, and we're definitely hoping for The Dancing Detective #2, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah.
That would be great. We didn't talk about it. I wanted to tell you. I'll just quickly touch upon it.
You don't have to. Hold up here. When it comes to this movie and to the Hallmark, it is the amount of time for you to express what you wish to express, not quickly.
Okay, great.
So tell us what we need to know.
Yes. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience. Well, first of all, I'll just tell it from my personal experience creating this. It was such a intense experience. I was cast on Friday and I flew out on Sunday and was on set on Monday.
You serious?
And then we were just going for it. But it was such a thrill. We were in Malta, so it's all shot in Malta. There's these gorgeous locations. I fell in love with Malta and the Maltese people and just everything that has to do with it's such a beautiful country. It's an island, but it's gorgeous. And I didn't know that. And the Maltese, they talk like just their accent. It's just, and they're such a warm and open people. It's that whole experience was one of those gifts, sometimes you get those gifts.
Yeah.
It was a little stressful at the beginning because I was just oh my God, I have to create a character in 2 days, but something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I wish to go back and reshoot things, but you always wish to do that. But it was such a great experience, and we worked with Will Kemp and Lacey on this production, and they were just such a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous people to work with. And just, I think, and I was talking to Lacey when we wrapped up, and she was saying that truly this production was so heartwarming. I feel like everybody was just gathered, and it was the right chemistry, and the people were nice. Everything was you're always like, oh, we're going to make it work. Of course, there's always time pressure. But it was just general, like one of the best experiences I had. So, yes.
I'm really excited to hear about all that.
The story's cute, Hallmark movies. The story's cute. It's the dancing detective, and they're solving a murder together.
I like that. I like
while
that
they're
conceit.
dancing.
I like that conceit. Yeah.
And I like that. It's a little not your usual Hallmark, story.
Yeah.
So we were just dancing around in Malta, which was, we had so much fun.
I have I got for a gift, I believe, from my daughter, a Hallmark movie hero T-shirt, which I probably should have worn for this interview, but that's usually that could show up in the summer and around the holiday times. So, no, that's fantastic to hear about that experience. And wow, just from Friday to Monday,
yes.
It's a kind of a thrill of a story to hear about.
It was one of those, Like I love when I hear sometimes like movie stars saying, yes, I was preparing for this for a year to find my character, and I was like, oh, you're so lucky.
Yeah, that's cute. That's a cute idea. Did you struggle?
That's a cute idea, Well, sometimes you have time. I like to work under pressure because I'm also living, being a New Yorker, and there's always time limitations to everything, and I've working in theater, you only get 2 weeks and then you have opening night, which for European actors, it's unheard of because they get at least a month of, rehearsals. And then also working in indie scene, which I did mostly in New York, it's always you don't have the funds to play, or we're doing this. We have 2 weeks. We're shooting a feature, and we're just going to all make it work,
Yeah.
So I do love working under pressure because I feel it makes everyone step up, And I don't know, maybe because I'm laid back as a person, I need a little pressure to not to show up 100%,
Yeah.
But I do wish I would have a little more than 2 days. 2 weeks. 2 weeks would be ideal.
Yeah, that's wild, and I think it's one of those things too, because it's sometimes when any of us have something to do, I think at the end, sometimes there's something to accomplish, and there's a time, and there's just a lot of other details that I would wrap my head around that can fall off too. So sometimes it's useful just to be all right, shit, doesn't seem possible, but everybody else is working what seems to be impossible. So
it doesn't seem it doesn't seem possible, but it's happening. So we're just going to make it
still
happen.
It's still on the piece of paper up there that I saw. So
yeah, it was a little bit one of those experiences where I was just like, wow, this is crazy, but we're it's happening,
I love it. Nataša, I got to tell you, I love talking. I love talking about movies and art, and it's been a real pleasure to meet with you and chat with you, and actually to hear about some of the the experience within your work that that just
behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and so everybody, make sure you check out Nataša's work. And best of luck wherever you are a New Yorker and you're Slovenian, but best of luck where you're doing your work, and really happy to have you on the podcast. And folks, Matthew Kyle Levine, a couple episodes, we'll have those in the show notes, and the feature Daddy's Wallet when Nataša was in. But thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun to talk about just everything and nothing with you. Definitely something other than nothing.
Yeah. You get to, at the end, figure we've covered it all. I at least put words to say we've covered it all.
Yeah, we did cover quite a bit.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing.
And listeners, to stay connected with us and our guests, visit somethingratherthannothing.com. Join our mailing list for exclusive updates and access to guest-created art. If you enjoyed this episode or any episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast platform. People really read that shit. Your support helps us reach more listeners and spread our community across the planet. This is a global show, and we like to give a shout out to our many listeners across the world, including many listeners in Canada, Spain, Germany, UK, Argentina, Brazil, India, Thailand, and so many more places. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Something Rather Than Nothing Podcast for behind-the-scenes content. And the best way to help the show is to tell your friends about us. If you love it, they'll love it too. Tell your friends who love it. We love you. This is Something Rather Than Nothing Podcast.